You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 67. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. You've heard of mansplaining, right? It's when someone, usually a man, interrupts a woman in order to explain something that she fully knows about, or that she is an expert in, or that she doesn't need explained to her. In fact, Merriam-Webster added mansplaining to the dictionary in March of 2018. The dictionary definition of mansplaining is when a man talks condescendingly to someone, especially a woman, about something he has incomplete knowledge of, with the mistaken assumption that he knows more about it than the person he's talking to does. You might think mansplaining is the worst, but I have something even worse than mansplaining to tell you about today. It sounds impossible, right? What could be worse than being condescended to and talked down to? I am going to tell you in a minute, but before I do, let's dissect mansplaining a little more and share some examples. The first example to share is such a classic, and it is so obvious. The situation consisted of a 22-year-old male coworker mansplaining to his female coworker about getting pregnant and birth control, with advice about using hormonal birth control because, quote unquote, you can get pregnant at any time. Keep in mind that neither of these colleagues were gynecologists or worked in the women's health field. And a few things to point out about this example: in most cases, coworkers probably do not need to discuss getting pregnant and birth control. Probably never. And since we're on the topic of pregnancy, here's just a quick public service announcement that it is never, ever, ever a good idea to ask someone when she's due or if she's pregnant. There is just no reason to introduce the topic if she hasn't brought it up herself definitively first. And can we all agree that unless it is literally their job, men never need to tell women anything about female reproductive health? And if it is their job, then the man should be doing a lot of asking questions first before explaining anything. Here's a less incendiary example of mansplaining. It's still not great, though. A woman and a man connected on a dating app and were exchanging messages. And at one point, he began mansplaining to her how women do not like men who participate in quote-unquote feminine activities or men who express their emotions. Thank you for that explanation of what women do and don't like, sir. I wonder what he considered feminine activities. And I fully own my own snarky attitude here. So let me soften this a little to say I can kind of understand, maybe a little, what was happening. He was sharing his own experiences and observations, and that is totally fine. I think it just crossed over from sharing an opinion to mansplaining when he stopped just talking about himself and his own examples and started generalizing about an entire gender group of which he was not a member to a member of that gender group. And I am not trying to single men out, not at all. I am sure there are lots of types of splaining. I'm sure I have been guilty of some of these myself. What about non-parents telling moms and dads how to raise their kids? What about people with kids assuring child-free people that they will change their minds? What about people telling each other how to handle their relationships, their work situations, and even their money? It's easy to see how tempting it can be to kid-splain and date-splain and money-splain to someone else with complete confidence when you actually don't really know their situation at all. So, why is mansplaining so bad? I might start a little controversy here, but I am going to make the bold claim that it's really not that bad. Well, that's a contradiction to everything that I just said, right? But no, it really is actually not too bad if you can be objective about it. Here's what I mean. If I am being interrupted by someone or overtaken by someone to tell me what I already know or what I'm an expert in, as long as I don't make it mean anything, it's not that bothersome. Annoying? Yes. Embarrassing for them? Yes. But if I can be objective and just let it roll right off my back, it's okay. It's just an irritating temporary exchange. But usually, in the midst of a massive mansplanation, we don't have that much grace and equanimity. We don't just let it roll right off of our backs. We are bothered and annoyed and irritated by it, especially when it's not just a one-time occurrence, but a consistent practice by the same offender over and over again. If we are getting annoyed or irritated or upset, if someone starts mansplaining or kidsplaining or datesplaining to us, the real reason we start feeling those emotions is because of what we are thinking. Maybe we're thinking, excuse me, you shouldn't be interrupting me. Or, excuse me, you're acting like I don't know what I'm talking about. Or all of the other possible, excuse me's. Or maybe our thoughts don't even start with an excuse me. Maybe these thoughts going through our head sound like, he thinks I don't know this. She thinks I'm stupid. They think I'm a child. She thinks I'm dumb. Who knows? Our brain is offering us all these thoughts, and these thoughts are what make us annoyed or upset or angry or any of the other negative emotions. So if you ever do find yourself being any kind of splained to, there are a few things you could do. And there's maybe some things that you might do and maybe some things that you might not want to do. One thing that I really recommend that you consider, if available to you, is for you to step out of yourself so that you can look at the situation objectively. Instead of being the person in the moment who is being mansplained to, what if you could just step outside and look at two people in a conversation from a distance so that you don't take it personally? What if you could consider the splainer, that's what I'm calling the person giving the explanation, what if you could consider the splainer's motive? Maybe he does know better than I do. Maybe she feels threatened by me. Maybe he feels out of his depth or insignificant. And so that mansplaining or kidsplaining or money-splaining is a way to bolster themselves or to prove to themselves that they are significant. And if you are able to, while you're coming from that objective place, while you're not taking it personally, hopefully you're also remembering that you have the option to love unconditionally whenever you want. So maybe in that moment of being splained to, you also have the option to forgive. Wow. What a relief, right? What freedom. Instead of being upset and feeling talked down to and feeling interrupted and feeling ignored or less than, what if you could just feel unconditional love for this annoying splainer and just forgive and go about your life without letting it bother you? That would be amazing, right? Please don't misunderstand. I am not suggesting that we approve of this very rude and negative habit of splaining. I am not suggesting that we accept it with open arms, and I am not making any excuses for it. I say let's rid the world of all types of splaining as soon as possible. And in the meantime, until we are rid of it as a civilization and as a society, I certainly don't think we should resist it. I think we should notice when it is happening with an open mind and an open heart and accept instead of resist. Not condoning, but also not condemning. Okay, now I want to tell you what is worse than being mansplained to. You know what's worse? It's meansplaining. That's right, it's like mansplaining, except it has an E in it. It has the root word of mean in it, and it is very mean. Meansplaining means blaming and shaming ourselves. And I think the added E might just represent that it comes from the ego. This is not when another person interrupts you and talks down to you and tells you what you should think or what you should know or how they know better. This is when you do it to yourself inside of your own head. The reason why this is so much worse than the other kind of splanations is because we don't even realize that it's happening usually. And unlike when we're being mansplained or datesplained or money-splained to, and our defenses go up and we realize something negative is happening and something that we don't agree with is happening, when we are meansplaining to ourselves, we might just believe it, accept it, go along with it, agree with it, and not stand up for ourselves, not dispute the meansplanation, not question the motive for it, and not forgive ourselves. So we're not even aware that we're doing it, and we do it. When we hear our own meansplanations, we don't question that the meansplaining that's happening might be wrong, or it might not be the only possible explanation in this moment, or it might not even be relevant. But here we are, listening to that meansplaining voice and giving it a lot of attention and a lot of belief, and maybe we're even taking action on it. And here's what meansplaining sounds like in my head sometimes. Your designs are not good enough. You cannot compete with people who have more experience than you. That thing that you are thinking about doing, it will take too much time and too much energy, so you might as well not even start. Oh, you wouldn't be any good at that. Other people can do that much better than you ever could. And here's what meansplaining might sound like in your head. You really messed up. You're probably going to get fired now. Or, people are not going to like you if you do this. In fact, they will be mad at you. And everything is ruined. Nothing will ever be the same. Oh, these are way harsh, right? But do they sound a little familiar to you? Have you heard any of these meansplanations inside of your own mind? So going back to the initial examples that I gave you a few moments ago, let's think about when someone is being mansplained to and the mansplainer isn't really the expert. The receiver of the condescending and talking down to is the expert, like the woman who was dating, who was being told what women like, or the woman who had her own female reproductive organs being told how and when it is possible for women to conceive. The receiver of the message was actually the expert. So who is the expert during a meansplanation? When you're being meansplained to by your own mean mind, who's the expert? Not your mean mind. It is your inner voice, your intuition. So what can you do when you notice you are being or have been meansplained to? The first thing I'm going to suggest is just like we did when you were being condescended to or talked down to by another person, zoom out, step outside of yourself to look at your thoughts objectively. What thought or what message are you getting from that meansplaining voice? Is it true? Is it relevant? Do you need to believe it? Is there an alternative that you could believe instead? And secondly, just like when you're being condescended to or talked down to, when you are meansplaining to yourself, don't take it personally. I actually caught this the other day. I was considering everything that I had completed the day before and noticed the meansplaining voice telling me, that's it? That's not enough. And since I caught it mid-meansplination, I responded to myself, excuse me. It was exactly the right amount. It was the perfect level of productivity for a Tuesday. See, you don't have to beat yourself up for thinking negative thoughts. You don't have to judge your meansplaining ego for trying to be helpful. And you can remind yourself that this experience is totally human and totally normal. Of course, our primitive brains are going to look for ways that we can avoid pain, like the pain of rejection or failure. Of course, our primitive brains are going to look for ways that we can conserve energy, like the energy required to start something new or try something more difficult. So when you hear that meansplaining voice, don't assume that it's true about you personally, and don't worry too much that you're hearing it. Thirdly, just like when you were able to be objective and consider the motive of that talking down to condescending explainer, like asking, do they feel out of their element? Are they feeling ignored? Think about the motive of your own mean mind when it's doing some meansplaining to you. Is it trying to protect you? Is it conserving energy for you by telling you not to think of anything new? I think the motive of my mind when it told me that I hadn't done enough the day before goes to my maybe irrational fear of wasting time. I need to do a lot of work on that. So noticing my mind talking down to me about not having done enough is just really its way of protecting me from the threat of wasting time. It's not a very sophisticated protective tactic, and it could do more harm than good, but I can kind of understand why it's happening. Finally, with unconditional love and compassion, forgive your meansplaining mind. Even though it's annoying and bothersome and irritating, it's just doing its job. It's just coming up with all the worst case scenarios and telling you what might happen and why you shouldn't and why you can't. That's totally normal. It's totally human. It's really not a problem since you are able to catch it mid-meansplination. Let's talk about what's the opposite of all those types of splaining we were talking about earlier. What if every person in the world never condescended or talked down? What if they always just listened openly and didn't need to be the expert or need to show that they were right? What if they were also open to learning and open to being contradicted and open to maybe even having been wrong? What if everyone was just open to non-judgment? Well, the same is true for meansplaining. What's the opposite of meansplaining? It's listening openly to ourselves, to our ideas, to our thoughts, to our fears, to our doubts. It's not needing to be the expert or to be right. And this goes with not needing to know how. It's being open to learning and it's being available to be contradicted. Can you imagine that you could welcome being contradicted? That is how you learn. That is how you grow. That's how you develop a diverse set of ideas and opinions and beliefs. And here's my apology. If I have ever splained anything to you and irritated or offended you, I am sorry. I'm sure I meant well, but I also know I'm human and eager to share my opinions. So please accept my apology and let me know when it happens so that I can learn. And if there is a grouchy person out there who thinks that this whole podcast is just a big uninvited podsplanation of me giving you advice and unwelcome suggestions about how you can live your life, then I'm also sorry, and I invite that person to stop listening, please. My theories and advice are only meant for those who want to hear them. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope it gave you something to think about, and I hope you are on the lookout for your own meansplaining mind. Let me know what you think, and if you have any questions or any resistance, leave a comment at bexb.org/meansplain, MEANSPLAIN. Or send me an email at hi@bexb.org. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexb.org to see how we can work together.